And then my brain did that weird thing brains do sometimes and completely blocked the memory. There was years where I could not have recounted that story for you. Hi, I'm Vince. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm a pastor, and I'm a follower of Jesus. Due to some very difficult circumstances, I was adopted when I was born, and I was adopted into a family, like all families, that had particular struggles, and one of those led to me being abused in different ways. And there was a particular event that was maybe worse than the rest. I had committed some infraction, I don't remember the details, but my adopted mother had grabbed a hold of me and pinned me to a dresser by the throat. And I can remember this now, I didn't for a while, I'll explain that, but I can remember reaching and trying to free myself from the grasp, and basically she choked me until I passed out, and she left me as kind of a heap on the floor. And I crawled to the middle of the room when I woke up, and whatever my conception was of God at that time, and I can't tell you where it came from, but I, at 7 years old or so, was shaking my fist towards heaven and screaming at God, why me? Why do I have to go through this? And in my little child's mind, I'm comparing myself to all the other children at school, assuming none of them are going through any of that, which of course is not always true, but that was where I was at. And so that happened. And then my brain did that weird thing brains do sometimes and completely blocked the memory. There was years where I could not have recounted that story for you. And later, I was a counselor at a kids camp. I had had very impactful experiences at camp as a young man, and so that pushed me to want to be able to provide that for other kids. And so at 16, I went and worked at a camp, and we would pray with each of the kids every night at the end of the day. And I had a bunk mate, a friend of mine. He was from New Zealand, and so our bunks were next to each other. We're kind of partners, if you think of it that way. And as he's praying with one of the young boys, the little boy was crying. And so David asked him, hey man, what's going on? And the little boy said, well, my parents are getting a divorce. I found out right before I came to camp, and it's my fault. And so David knew that another part of my story was that I'd been in a fight with my adopted brother one time, and my adopted mother had kneed me very hard and hurt me pretty bad, and so that had led to a conflict between her and my adopted dad. They got in an argument, and she came back around to me and said, we're getting a divorce now, and it's your fault. And so David, knowing some of my background, and he being a pastor's kid, coming from a fairly stable family, just didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to answer him. And so he came and got me, and I took that little boy outside and just sat with him outside the bunk, put my arm around him, and I just began to speak life to him and speak out of my experience and let him know, man, there's no way that that's your fault. And I know it feels really dark and hopeless right now, but our trust is really well placed when we put it in Jesus around these things. And so I'm just trying to love him and speak life to him. And as that was happening, I had this experience where all at once, that memory of what had happened and that I had screamed out at God, why me? That memory unlocked, and I began to be able to see it in my mind like a video. And at the very same time that memory unlocked, I'm not saying I heard an audible voice of the Lord, but however it was He communicated to me, He made it clear that He was telling me, this is why. The fact that I was able in that moment to minister to that little boy when someone else couldn't. And what that showed me was that all of the pain I had endured as a child, it wasn't that God had abandoned me, He was with me. He was always there, and there was purpose in it. And from that point forward, I can say with a high degree of confidence, I've never asked God again, why me? And all of this has taught me that when the Word of God, it speaks of the Lord being good and loving and sovereign, that He always is working, even in the midst of the darkest things, for the good of those that love Him and are called according to His purpose. That's not cliche, that's not just Christianese, that's real. And it matters so much. It matters to know that God has a purpose and His faithfulness can always be counted on. And I'm thankful.